Okay. Well, welcome to Changing the Game, Season 5. I'm your host, Jennifer Hensley with Playmaker Coaching Consulting. Great to be here with you all today for our final segment in this season, talking about ways to attract and close more ideal clients, especially as we approach the end of the year. If you missed any of our previous segments, feel free to check us out. The best place to connect is on Facebook at NM Marketing Playmakers, and you can get the links to our YouTube channel and all of our previous recordings and hearing from advisors and their success stories and things that you can do immediately within your business to see more success. Today we're joined by Amy Stiner. Amy and I have had the privilege of working together this past several months, and excited to have her on here today to share a little bit more about what's working for her and some of the great strides that she's seen in just the last several months with her business that you can use, I think, to see some more success in your business as well. So thank you, Amy, for being here today. Great to have you. Great to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, start us off, and I know we'll have people joining on as we get going. So tell everybody a little bit more about your practice, how long you've been in business, where you're at, what kinds of clients you typically work with, and then we'll dive into our conversation today about how to close more ideal clients.
Okay, thank you again for having me. So I have been with Northwestern Mutual since 2014. I was a career changer in my early 30s when I started with Northwestern. And I made a big career change. I was in higher education prior to my career as a financial advisor. And as I made that career transition, I realized that there was a big gap for individuals who have a lot of student loan debt and how to help them manage their finances after they get done with school. So a very large portion of my clientele has $100,000 or more of student loan debt, some private, some federal, some a combination of the two. But what I've noticed along the way is that they really need a plan, not only to pay back their student loans, but also to set themselves up for all the other things that are important when we think about financial planning. And so I would say a vast majority of my clients fall into that space. I do specialize in working with dentists across the nation, as well as physicians and other graduate level programs, graduates, things like anesthesiology, CRNA, doctors of physical therapy, people who really do have a lot of student loan debt.
Okay. And I think at this point you have one person full-time working with you. Is that correct?
I do. And then I have a part-time team that helps locally on the investment side of the business.
Okay. Great. Well, we want to dive into our topic in 10 to make sure we stay on track for our conversation today. And then we're going to open it up to questions. So if anybody has one at a time, go ahead and start thinking about those. You can drop those in the chat. We'll make sure to provide some time for that before we wrap things up today. So as we think about how to close more clients, obviously everybody wants more ideal clients. But when you think about that, Amy, why is that something that's particularly meaningful to you and what that will do for your business?
For me, identifying who my ideal client was probably the hardest thing for me to do, because I felt like I wanted to be able to help everybody. And so I would take meetings that didn't make me feel fulfilled in the work that I was doing, but I felt like I needed to take them. And through the progression of the years I've been in the business, I really realized that I connected best with people who I knew there was a value right from the get-go, which is the student loan component of my business. And so honing in on who I really connect best with also then has allowed me to have more energy and focus when I am in the meetings with those clients. In addition to that, then when I am prospecting for new referrals in my target market, they are exactly like who I am sitting with, and it makes that conversation much easier to have.
I love that. And I think a few weeks ago, we had Katie Jacobson on here, and I think she talked about that same thing about sometimes just defining what your ideal client is. If you want to close more, you first have to really have some honest conversations with yourself about who is your ideal client. And then that makes that so much easier once you understand really who you enjoy working with and what that person looks like. So tell us a little bit more about one particular marketing strategy. I think you've tried have few good things that are working for you, but what's one particular marketing strategy that you've used that's helped you to close more ideal clients?
In the process of really honing in on my target market, one of the things I realized was I needed to get referred to more of those people. And so what I did was I had a client list pulled of all of my top clients, and I identified 5 of my top ideal clients, and I scheduled networking meetings with them. And I told them that the purpose of the meeting was to brainstorm people like them that needed to know about the work that I did. So they knew going into it that that's what we were going to be talking about. And I was so afraid to do it, but yet it was simple, and it was so great to get the response from them that I did, which was, yes, how can we help you grow your business? So that was really, really targeted marketing that helped me, really increase the number of ideal clients within the last 6 months.
Yeah. And I remember some of our conversations around this too, where it was like, wow, when I just ask for what I want, like people are actually really open to giving them to you. Once you have that clarity of who you want to be introduced to, and you just ask for that. So tell us a little bit more of, like, if you were to break that down, and it sounds like it's not too complicated, like you said, but what would be the 3 steps if somebody else wanted to get started with that you'd recommend that they take?
Number 1 is to pull a client list. You've got to know who your clients are. I sorted mine by occupation because that was who I really wanted to target. Once I sorted them by occupation, I went through and highlighted the top 5, the ones that I connected best with, that I felt like were super open and engaged in the planning process, and that I knew I wanted to be with people who are like them. I then reached out to those individuals, and I scheduled a meeting that was very specific to what we were going to do. It wasn't a review meeting. It wasn't anything except, I want to tell you about what's happening in my business, and I want to brainstorm people with you. And they were open to it. They were very open to it. And so they came in with the idea of who they wanted me to talk to.
Sounds like you did a good job setting expectations with that.
Yes. So I think, and I think the last thing I would say is, when I set the meeting, I set it for some place. We didn't meet at my office. We met for coffee in some instance. We met for breakfast or lunch in some instances. And I wanted them to feel like it was a more social conversation rather than business. And I think that helped a lot as well.
Yeah. And just changing the environment, sometimes how I can put somebody in a different state of mind than like, this is the same thing we've always done, or what to expect with that conversation.
Yes.
Great insights with that. Now, I know one of the things that we had talked about too at one point was when we went through your top clients, and originally one of those first conversations, we were looking more at revenue of like, who's on this list. And then I remember you saying like, you know what? They're not my A+ client. Share a little bit about that.
I had always thought that A+ meant the most money, that they were doing the most revenue, or I was managing the most of their investments. But when I really looked at the list and dove into what do they have in place, how engaged are they in the entire planning process, it was eye-opening that I had left out some of the people who were really truly engaged, and I had given credit to people who were terrible when I met with them every time. I saw their name on my phone and I dreaded having to call them back. That is not an A+ client to me. Yes, I might manage money for them, but if I'm not excited to have a cup of coffee with them, they are not on my A+ list anymore. And I think one of the things that's hard for advisors sometimes is to say, I am not going to meet with somebody who makes me feel that way, regardless of what I am doing for them. And I think the longer you're in the business, the more comfortable you become saying that to people and telling people what your expectation is of engaging in the planning process.
So, and that might already answer the question we're going to talk about, like what's been the biggest challenge with leaning into that. Anything else that you would add to that?
The only thing I would add, and I think this is something that I had to work through even in the process of going through my client list, the fear of, if I focus so much in a niche, it's going to take away all these other people who I could meet with. And so it really is transitioning from you basically have to have an abundance mindset, getting rid of this mindset that you have to meet with everybody. But instead, when you focus on your expertise, then there will be plenty of those individuals that will come to light that you can meet with.
Yeah. So tell us along those lines of what were some of the other like learnings that you've had that other people, stumbling blocks or things that maybe they could avoid or can just help them expedite this even faster for themselves?
you have to have daily discipline on asking for referrals. This is still a constant conversation between you and I, Jen. This is still a constant conversation with my coach. It's fun to ask for referrals when you're excited about what you're doing. And I will say it's much easier when you're excited, but you also have to ask on the days that you're not excited about who you're talking to get to those A+ clients. And I think the other thing for me that was a big aha was don't be afraid to be asked to be introduced to people's parents. Because I work in the dental space, I'm finding that there's many generations of dentists and families. Well, now we have a huge opportunity for referral, succession planning, et cetera, because dad's a dentist that's been working for 40 years and now the son or daughter is coming in to practice with them. So don't be afraid to ask for the referral up to a parent, because the other thing about that I learned is that parents aren't talking to their kids about this kind of stuff. And so we don't know if the parents are taken care of or not. And we want to make sure that they are.
And I know that's a big part of your practice too, of like really that high standard of care that you want to provide, those personal touches of going the extra mile for your clients. So I think that goes really well with how your brand, you want people to perceive your brand. So we always want to give our audience something that's like a try it at work tip, something they can do in the next week or two that's bite-sized to move forward. What would you suggest for them? What's the one thing they can do in this space?
If I were them, I would pick one client that when they think about their clients, this is the person that comes to mind the fastest, the person that they're excited to have drinks with or a social conversation with, and schedule a networking meeting with them.
Great.
Tell them what you're doing in your business, give them some kind of exciting end of the year takeaway, and ask them for referrals.
Awesome. So we're going to open up to questions. And as we get ready for that and everything, like I said, feel free to drop those in the chat or you can unmute and ask your question. Would love to hear from those that are with us today. If you're not with us live, certainly reach out to us and we can make sure to follow up afterwards with any additional resources and questions. Amy, we'd love to hear from you too. Who else do you feel like is doing innovative things or you look for as a thought leader, especially in the marketing space, that you think this audience could benefit from following and learning more about what they're doing?
Oh, goodness. I love Brene Brown. I know she's not necessarily in the marketing space, but my focus with my coach is always around my headspace, not the business necessarily. And so I always look to find motivational people in the community that are, building businesses, working mamas, juggling kids, husband, life, all of those things. So Brene Brown is definitely somebody that I have followed for a long time. And Rachel Hollis would be the other one that would come to mind. I just really, really enjoy both of them.
Great suggestions. I know I follow along with a lot of their information as well. And I would second that those are excellent recommendations and we all need so much. I think the mindset side of it goes really hand in hand with so much of what we talk about on the marketing side. And I love for you as we open up for questions to talk just for a minute about that too, of how has that worked for you, both having a business coach that's helped you some on the mindset at the same time that we were working on some of the marketing elements and how those actually worked really well together.
They did work really well together. I think for me, fear has always been something that has been a crutch, I guess, something that I fall back to, and I have to really pull myself back out of that place. Working with my coach, in addition to working with you and developing really my marketing campaign and focus, I was able to address some of those concerns. Things like, well, what happens if there is nobody else to call? And how do I continue to grow if I'm closing who it is that I'm going to be working with? And really, those are fear-based mindsets. And I know that logically, but sometimes the emotion takes over and you have to really have somebody that knows you well. Like my coach and I, we're going into our third year working together. So she knows me very well and she can call it quick. And she says, okay, but let's talk about that logically. How does that actually play out? So with you, I was able to get through Playmakers the tangible components to driving my marketing strategy forward. But with my coach, I was able to then work through the emotional components of what that is going to do for my business.
That's awesome. I think that helps a lot of people because sometimes it's like, oh, which coach do I need? Or how do I prioritize this? I don't want to feel like I'm duplicating efforts of how it can work really nicely together to help you move forward. So I'd love to hear too from you. I think you were talked about the things you've been doing. How is it different really for you now that you've really leaned into that market and asking for, who you want to spend your time with?
Um, I don't think anything I'm doing is different in my day to day. The people who I'm talking to are different. It truly is still an activity business. I'm in a study group with some very veteran female advisors at Northwestern, and everybody still, it breaks down to your activity. Are you asking to see the right amount of people? Are you actually seeing them? Are you doing your phoning? The numbers are the numbers, and there's no emotion in the numbers. So for me, I'm still trying to set 2 new a day. I'm still asking for referrals every day. The types of meetings that I'm doing are different. I am doing more networking than I've probably done since the first year in the business, but it's fun for me because I get to be a part of things in a very different way. As an example, I have a client who's starting his own dental practice from the ground up, and he wanted me to be a part of the search for property and working with the financial team from his lending standpoint. I wouldn't have had time to do that before in working with all of the other clients that I had. So it's been really fun to be able to focus and really go deep with people in a different way.
Well, it sounds like that's going to make you even all the more expert in that market of the way that you really show up and help them and know everything about them inside and out, and what their struggles and their pain points are, and how to help navigate them by having that experience, being so intimately involved with that. Krista, while you want to ask anything today? I don't want to put you on the spot, but want to make sure we give you opportunity if there's something you'd like to get help with.
Yeah, no, well, nice to meet you. I'm a new Northwestern rep, so it's always fun to hear from veteran female advisors. And so just part of it, where was the pain point or the piece that shifted to wanting or needing a coach? And so where you shifted to wanting to work with Jen and the different pieces?
That's a great question. I am going into my 10th year in the business, and my career prior to this, I was a coach and mentor to other people. So I've always believed in that. I think it's super, super valuable. And coming into Northwestern, I actually thought I wanted the leadership route within the Northwestern Mutual system. And I learned very early on that that was not for me. But one of the benefits that I received from that process was the amount of mentorship that comes with it. So I had a coach within my first 6 months at Northwestern that was my field director, and I would work with them. I could tell them that as my business became more established and I was a little bit more independent, I knew I needed some help on the mental side of things. So to be honest, I went to a therapist first. I started there, and I'm grateful that I did that. But once I was done with that, I felt like I still needed a check-in with somebody, and I started exploring coaches and what they were going to do for me. I asked for recommendations from everybody that I could talk to, and I interviewed a lot of coaches. The reason why I chose the coach that I did was because it wasn't just about the numbers to her. That wasn't what we were going to talk about every day. And that's what I was looking for. The pain point for me was I have to have an outlet that understands what I'm dealing with and can help me manage my own stress to be able to focus on doing the work of the business. I didn't need somebody to look at my numbers anymore and say, well, you didn't do enough fact finders, or you didn't, ask for QSs enough, because I already knew the numbers well enough. So I think I was 5 years into my career with Northwestern when I started interviewing coaches, I think.
And I know from your experience, like both Kristen and myself have a lot of intimate knowledge with Northwestern Mutual as well. So like you said, it's not focused on the numbers, but I'm sure that was probably part of your evaluation process of understanding your business and what value they could provide for you.
Yeah. And then I think the second question that you asked about working with Jen and Playmaker, that was a conversation that had been happening or kept coming up every year when I would do business planning. I'm like, but this is who I want to work with. This is who I want to go to market for. And the conversation was always, well, how are you going to do that if you can't produce a website that tells these people you want to work just with dentists, or you don't have a mission or a vision statement that tells everybody that's who your clientele is. And I think the reason why I didn't do it before was because I was terrified of cutting out all the people who then I wasn't going to work with anymore.
Yeah. And you talked a little about that, of the mindset side of that, and the having that abundance mentality. One of the things, and then I think we might have time for one more question after this. One of the things that we talked about too was we went through a target market analysis and really evaluating opportunities within your markets, and tell a little bit about your experience and like how that worked as you were also reaching out to your best clients to have those focused conversations.
The target analysis just gave me more ammunition to say, this is who I want to be with. It was a confirmation of everything that I was feeling, because it was the individuals that I connected best with on a personal level. It was the people who are in the age range that I wanted to work in, and the stage of life that I wanted to work in. And, oh, by the way, they also have the financial means to need the help that we provide. And so that it was just a really good confirmation of that for me. And I think the other thing that it did was it showed me the other groups of individuals that I had been working with a lot financially were not beneficial to me. And I think I had been feeling that, but then when you look at the numbers, again, there's no emotion. It's just black and white. And I needed to see that to have the reinforcement to say, okay, it's time for me to move on from this group. I can't serve them in the same way as I want to serve the people who really are my target market.
Wonderful. And I think that's so true of, like, you talk about the emotion and the logic. And I mean, most of us tend to be more one or the other in terms of how we make our decisions, but both of them are certainly important to us in terms of actually transforming to a different state than where we maybe been. So it sounds like you are really able to look at it both sides, like, hey, this is the facts, here's the data, but here's also, what I'm struggling with, and how do you make those mental shifts in your business as well. If there's no more additional questions, Chris, did you want to ask anything additional? We do have a couple minutes before we kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, I did have a question. What's a daily habit or a book that really helps with a shift to help manage that emotional state and everything in the business?
I'll follow up with you on that, Carissa, because there are so many that come to my mind, and I want to make sure to point you in the right direction. But I will tell you that one of Rachel Hollis's books, Girl, Wash Your Hair, I read it several years ago, right after it came out. And I wouldn't say that it's a daily habit type of book, but I will tell you that it's an empowering thinking book. So it challenges the way that you believe your world should be, and how you can then take that new empowerment and change your situation. So I think there is some real power in it. And there's so many different books that you can read. I love podcasts too. I think, listening to different types of podcasts are great as well, because it gives you a small clip from lots of different environments. Fear Is Not the Boss of Me is another one that I read that was wonderful.
And I'll add one podcast I listen to that you might be interested. It's if you haven't heard Jill Payne, she talks about be a freaking dime, and how can you dime it? How can you be a 10, and a framework of using your body. And it's been a little while since I've looked back at it. I should listen to it again, but it's your body, your mindset. And there's one other component to it. I think it's your inner dialogue. And I love that part because, like, at least for me, I know sometimes, like, my inner dialogue knows, like, hey, I'm going down this rabbit hole that is not beneficial to me. It's not helpful, but I can't turn it off, even though I know that it's not productive. So with her starting with your body, and how can you raise your energy level by, getting up, moving, listening to music, breathing, all these other pieces. Sometimes the rest of the inner dialogue and all these other pieces can come along. Rather than trying to, like, I know I'm in this bad spot, how can I force myself to turn it around? If you start and kind of reverse engineer it, I found that at least really helpful to me. I love that approach that she positioned that way. And, just kind of seems fun. I always like those kinds of things too, when they have something that's like, oh, that's kind of fun. How can I be a dime? How can I be a 10? and little ways to raise your vibration. So that might be something. It is available on my website. If you're interested in checking out, I've got a link to it under the resources section at playmakercoach.com. And if you're interested in the target market assessment that Amy talked about today as well, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll send it out to you, or reach out to us on the NM Marketing Playmakers website, and we'll be sure to get those out to you, as well as the resource from today. So as a thank you for joining us today, Amy, as we start to wrap up, I would love to contribute to an organization that you're passionate about and give back to somebody, something that you're part of. Share with us today about some organization that we can help contribute to.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Alex's Lemonade Stand is something that's really important to, I think, to all of us. And that's always one of our go-tos. The Heart Association is another one that I think does fantastic work.
Yeah, those are both great. And I think all of us have probably in some fashion know somebody who's been impacted in one or the other of those areas. So I'm glad to be able to contribute to that, and appreciate your time and insights here today. We will be sending out the recording so you can listen to all of it again, or for those that weren't able to join us live, that you can get access to that. So thank you again, Amy. And like we said, we'll make sure to get those resources out to everyone. Remember her try it at work tip. Make it manageable. Start with one person and having that conversation. And sometimes when you just ask for what you want, it really can be that easy sometimes. We just have to take that action. So we'll be back next spring with season 6. If you have any specific topics that you want to hear, speakers that you'd like to hear from, we always feature a different NM speaker, or hey, you'd love to share something that you're doing that you think other people could benefit. We'd love to hear what that is. So let us know as we prepare for the spring session. We'd love to include your ideas and suggestions in that. And I have one final thought for you today. Now is the time to ask for what you want. Now is the time to do more of what you really enjoy. Now is the time to go close more ideal clients. Now is the time. So we thank you all for being with us this season. Love to stay connected, and we'll be back next spring with another season. Have a great day. Bye, guys.
Bye.